Test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is your host, Siddhartha Vaidyanathan. And I'd first like to welcome 81 All Out regular, Ashoka. Hey, Ashoka. Good to have you.
Hey, Sidvi.
Hey. And today we're both thrilled to have an esteemed guest on the show. Someone who I'm fortunate to describe as a good friend, but also someone who's been a writing hero for me over the years, both in terms of writing on cricket and writing on other things. And he's also been a real inspiration for several writers around the world, and a gift, I must say, to cricket writing over the last 20 years or so. Writer, editor, novelist, Rahul Bhattacharya. Hi, Rahul. Welcome, and so lovely to have you.
What's going on, Sylvie? Thanks so much for having me and for that very, very overkind introduction. And I should tell listeners who don't know this, but Sidvi is probably the inspiration for Virat Kohli's bowling action. In case you haven't seen Sidvi bowl, you must ask him to upload a video and spot the difference between him and Virat Kohli.
Yeah, and slightly more comical than Kohli, if you would like to, if you can even believe that. But yes, the wrong-footed
in-swinging demon. Wrong-footed in-swinging demon.
Wrong-footed in-swinging demon. Yes.
Yeah. You also had the double bounce variation, which I think Kohli didn't show us during the World Cup.
Yeah, I watched Kohli bowling and I was like, oh, I missed out on a great cricketing career with that action. So, unfortunately, don't have anywhere close to his talent with the bat. Rahul, I mean, many of you will obviously know this, but Rahul Bhattacharya is the author of two phenomenal books. One on cricket, Pundits from Pakistan, which is a tour book, travelogue, and I would say easily one of the best cricket books I have read, and many will agree as well. Written in 2004. And also later he published a novel, The Sly Company of People Who Care, which was set in Guyana and widely praised, won the Ondaatje Prize and several other awards. And I think it was shortlisted for the Man Asian Literary Prize and the Commonwealth Writers Prize, as Wikipedia tells me. So thank you again, Rahul, and it's wonderful to have you. Have you, maybe I missed it, but have you been on podcasts before? Is podcasting something that you have done?
No, I think I might have done one, which was where I think I was a part of a podcast with many other voices. So I think the demands were fewer. That made me nervous enough. Now to do a whole long solo with you is positively intimidating.
Don't worry. By the end of it, you will realize how.
Yeah, it's nice to have a friendly face at the other end. One I can see beaming across on Zoom.
Yeah, a bald beaming face always helps. So Rahul has actually been busy over the last month and a half or two. He's been writing about the World Cup, recently concluded World Cup. He's been traveling around India, and he's written a column for the Hindustan Times, and a wonderful column. I hope many of you have read it during the course of the World Cup, but if not, it's also online and you can read the archives. So yeah, we can probably start with, covering this tournament. It's not something I think you've done for a while, but if you can just start talking about the motivations for covering it, your thoughts, your pre-tournament thoughts and apprehensions about full-time cricket coverage, writing from the ground and press box, and generally sort of immersing yourself in a tournament has its own challenges.
Yeah, I mean, full-time might be sort of pushing it, given that it was probably going to be a tournament, and I could, if I crash and burnt, it would be. I had 6 weeks in which to do it, and I thought maybe I could last that course. Funny enough, even though I haven't been cricket like writing from the ground and sort of reporting and been on the circuit for a long time, I've been cricket editing for a long time with you for a while at the Cricket Monthly for ESPN Cricket Info. So much of, I think, the texture of cricket writing has changed significantly from the time I started, maybe in 20 years or 25 years ago. There is, I think there is a very clear distinction between a cricket analyst and a cricket writer. And I think cricket writers are also expected to be cricket analysts, which was easy back in the day when you didn't have that kind of data at your disposal, and you're not required to make sense of data in the way you are meant to do now. So I just wondered, do I actually know what's going on? If I'm just like watching the game and writing about the game the way I used to, describing things. I mean, as writers, we describe, we bring, especially if you're at the ground, what you try to do is bring a sense of the occasion to the page. Behind what you're seeing and what you're describing, is there like two other levels of cricket going on that you're actually not trained to see anymore because you're not actually filtering the data and looking at the threads and writing about the game in that sense? That thought crossed my mind, but since it was sort of beyond my capacity, I just didn't even try it. And I sort of wrote more or less as I always have, which is to bring a sense of what happened. If you were not there and you were to watch, if you were to read this, would you get a sense of what happened? Of course, not all the pieces were from the matches. Some of them were sort of reflective columns written in between games or picking up on say themes like left arm spin in the wake of Bishan Singh Bedi's passing or things like that. But there too, I think I lent more towards the anecdotal and towards something a casual reader might sort of respond to. A lot of the cricket writing has become specialist in the way because there's so much more to go into and so much more to mine and bring to the specialist reader, which we didn't actually have to even, I'd say, a decade ago. Well, that was all. Well, deadline apprehension, maybe it's a long time since I sort of filed on the buzzer. I've never actually had a newspaper deadline where, they've kept a hold for you on the page and you can't like, okay, I'm going to send this in 1 hour or whatever, the page has to go. So there were 3 or 4 matches where I wrote, filed on the buzzer, as it were, and but that was fun. It was actually really exciting to be able to do that. The nervousness and the anxiety of just pushing out those pieces before it's too late.
And I guess there's a strict word count as well, unlike on the web, right?
I like that. I think I like that very much. Just being, just having that sort of a limitation imposed on you. I think it refines the thinking to a degree as well. And it sort of, it requires you to be tight. It requires you to either tackle fewer ideas or tackle them more economically. And you're not always sort of, almost a sort of slave to your ambition of how deep and how big and how glorious can I make this piece of writing about this piece of cricket or about this cricketer. You just have 800 to 1,000 words.
Yeah, I wanted to drill a bit deeper into this cricket writing as being like a specialist job, and we were doing like a preview for this World Cup, and I realized how totally lost I was with the one-day game. I mean, it's almost like I had no grasp on the format anymore. Partly because not that many one-day games had happened in the last 3 or 4 years. To sort of draw like trends and figure out who is really doing well, who's getting hot at the right time and things. But also because there's so much of cricket going on that to get a hold on one format is almost impossible now. And you need to be so fully clued into it. Like you almost need to be like a format specialist or a franchise specialist. I would say more than even IPL specialist. I would say like a RCB specialist is the one who will actually figure out what's happening in the franchise. Yeah.
Yeah, and you like almost like tracking the parallel careers of 4 or 5 important cricketers and all the various franchises they play for and what they bring to each of those franchises. I mean, there's so many ways of specializing in cricket now. And you're absolutely right. You follow it like at a dozen different levels. And I mean, I couldn't even do that if I tried now. It's just, the amount of things you have to clear out of your desk in order to be able to do that. And even then, you'll find yourself kind of wanting. You won't be able to bring that kind of, insight, passion, analysis, whatever you say it. I don't think you can. It's possible for anyone to even watch that much cricket physically. Like, how can you?
Yeah, I mean, Karthik Krishnaswamy was on our podcast a few months ago, and he said how, he's in the job of covering the game, but then he goes on social media and he finds like people who seem to be following the games in much more depth than he is. So he's a little lost as to, am I out of my depth, or should I be bringing something to cricket writing that these others
And imagine him who's probably on top of many more things than much of the cricket writing world. I mean, yeah, but the World Cup is different in that the World Cup actually sort of gets the juices flowing a little bit. It doesn't always feel like that when you're in the middle of like match number 23 and one team is going to win by 183 runs and you realize you have 25 more matches to go. And I mean, these are also very long matches. I mean, they're longer. Of course, they're much longer than T20 cricket, but they're also much longer than Test match days. They start at 2, if you're watching toss, all of that, and watching a bit of the build-up, it would start at 1 p.m. India time. And if the match has actually gone all the way, and you watch presentations, all of that, that would be maybe close to sometimes 10:30, 11, whatever. It takes, it's like a huge chunk of your day on day. And so that happens. But I feel there is still, especially if you've not been watching so much cricket around it, there's a sense of occasion to the World Cup, which is nice. There's a sense of kind of things being on the line. There's a sense of this mattering. There's a sense of legacy, like legacy defining things happening, even as you watch them, which is nice. There is also, unfortunately, missing from this tournament. There's also usually at the World Cup, like a sense of global participation all in one event. A sort of almost, I mean, Carnival might be pushing it, but sometimes it can feel like that. There is a sort of a sense of this being a kind of festival and a global celebration of cricket, which is also wonderful. India, for various reasons to do with the BCCI and its organization, kind of pretty much did not allow that to happen. But that apart, just I feel that sort of sense of ennui does not infect the World Cup as much as it does cricket at large.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also, like, from a writer point of view, there is never a time. I mean, there's probably very rarely a time when you feel there is nothing to write, which can often creep in during, a sort of a long bilateral series when you feel that the day you've written pretty much everything that is there to write. And so today, what are you going to write? But in a World Cup, there is always that other team, the other player, there's something that you haven't explored. There's some new thing happening in some team always to sort of get.
I mean, there are 10 teams. There's 100 and, I mean, if you consider 15-man squads, there are 150 players at the same event. I mean, that's already a lot of material. There's BCCI, which is like already a lot of material.
So yeah, I wanted to actually get to that. So this BCCI, I mean, the amount of news that was coming out before this World Cup and even during this World Cup, I mean, whether it was tickets or scheduling and things changing in the last minute, these are problems that people were having to get into the country, and generally sort of the outfields, whether grounds are ready and everything else that was happening. And people were reporting about it, but does that reporting even matter anymore? I mean, to anybody? I mean, you could probably say there was a time when BCCI cared for what was written about them, but do they anymore? Or it's like, whatever.
I doubt it because, well, for one, they have their own, apart from the broadcast, which they pretty much control, they have um, they have their own website. They put on their own little videos from dressing rooms, and they do their own interviews. They have their own social media influencers and things like that. So there's a lot of the narrative that they can control. And it doesn't, yeah, I think you're right. It maybe pinches them at some level, but they know they can kind of shrug it off. They have yeah, they can get their secretary sitting between the biggest celebrities in India and he can feel good about himself. He doesn't have to bother with criticism in the press.
Yeah, and I think more than the Indian journalists, what perhaps pinched them slightly was the fact that there were journalists from other countries who were also reporting on these issues during the World Cup, which tends to happen because there are people from England and Australia and other countries who actually come and see and report. So, and of course, then it becomes like, oh, these people are jealous of how
Yeah,
we are.
of the might of Indian cricket.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think either way they have a defense.
Yeah, but it's the thing is, I met so many people in the World Cup. Forget the press. I met so many ordinary fans who were just kind of disgusted with the BCCI. They were like, just expose them. You meet them on trains outside. Guys, just like write about them. They'll send you links, the ugly truth of BCCI, etc. The fact that there's such few people, I mean, the number of fans who could bought tickets, especially for the final. Through the sort of channels set up for them to buy tickets was so few. I remember on the train to Ahmedabad going from Mumbai for the final, every other conversation was like, yaar, zyada mang raha hai, yaar, bahut zyada mang raha hai. Looking at the WhatsApp scroll, showing me the price list, presidential gallery ka ye dekh 4,60,000 mang raha hai. He said, "Arre bol thoda kam kar dega bhai, ye thoda kam kar dega. Just wait, we need 2 more. Just ask him to hold on. We'll get back to you." Even at the day before the match, like journalists are haggling with each other. Okay, wait, he's calling you back. Not 40, for 35. There was an absurd conversation where a guy was trying to buy, picking up 2 for, wait, let me get it right. I think they were 2 for 70, 2 tickets for 70K, 70,000. I mean, this is the kind of money people throw at cricket. I mean, that's the other thing maybe we should touch upon at like how affluent the cricket watching public has become necessarily, not because of the affluent have a greater
BCCI.
it was only they can afford to come to these matches. And wait, and the thing from the other side was, अच्छा 2 का 70, लेकिन 4 का I think 1.5 लाख पूछा था, something like that. So basically, ये क्या logic है भाई? 2 का कम, normally हमें discount मिलना चाहिए. So no, but to get 4 together or to get 2 more, I'll have to like hustle more. But like that black guy was basically asking for a higher rate per ticket for a greater number of tickets, which really upset the man on this side of the bargain. But anyway, that went through. But these conversations were everywhere. People were paying tens and thousands of rupees, lakhs of rupees to go. And unfortunately, a lot of them actually just wanted to come to be part of the moment when India won the World Cup. Some very hardcore cricket fans among them. Like next to me while traveling on the train was the guy who actually runs the Tendulkar Club in Bombay. I think in Kandivali. He's traveled cricket to watch cricket all over the world, and he's like, this is the worst. Just to get tickets, and he could only get tickets in the end because he knew someone had booked my show. He said, I gave up because I've been everywhere. I've had such great cricket watching experiences everywhere, and like this is the pitch. And so they actually, it's the fans who want the BCCI to be called out. For them to get tickets is an ordeal. And there's no transparency about this. You don't know how many tickets are going to be put on sale, how long they'll be on sale for. Suddenly they'll release a few. There'll be like some tatkal tickets like on the eve of the match. And there are no counters to buy tickets for. I mean, I find that so awfully like inconsiderate for people like who are not mobile savvy or whatever, just to be able to go and buy a ticket at a counter ought to be like a natural right of every citizen. And to be able to, if you have excess tickets, sell them on match day, open a counter and sell them on match day. But these things were just not done. Of course, we know a lot of the foreign the travelers from overseas were just shut out because of how late the schedule came out. Like virtually while the non-existing opening ceremony started is like when they finalized the schedule. And they're numbered in the hundreds. I mean, they were not, especially, I think perhaps I wasn't at that match, but the Bangladeshis in Calcutta for their 2 games there, especially one against Pakistan, that might have been a game which saw like a sizable overseas presence. And I can't think of too many others. I mean, teams which traditionally follow cricket travel in large groups, the English, the Australians, they were sort of just not to be seen.
Yeah, talking about tickets, I think there's that India-Australia match in Chennai. They were selling tickets for that match midway through that match.
But selling it where?
Online. That's the
Just open a counter now, sell, at least make it attractive for people who are like in the city to come down to the ground, buy and go inside. Like, I mean, I don't know. They're just, unki niyati kharab hai. I just even them.
After hearing all these hardships, I kind of feel, very sad because I watched all 45 matches with the laptop on my belly, lounging on the bed, eating chips. Man, I feel truly sorry for cricket fans too.
Your belly
But Ashok, Ashoka, you didn't even try to go down to Chepauk.
No. I learnt my lesson because unfortunately what has happened...
But the greatest venue in
yes,
the country.
The most knowledgeable.
So there?
Yes.
But this is true.
There is one unfortunate thing that happened and I kind of learnt from it. During the last India-Australia test series, there was a test that was scheduled in Dharmashala and I was supposed to go. Yeah, and it got cancelled, and these guys just
rerouted to Indore.
Yeah. And these guys handled it like, yeah, it's your misfortune. Sorry. And I kind of felt, oh, okay. I understood how a cricket board estimated a fan like me. In their estimation, I was irrelevant. So I kind of learned my lesson. I said, okay, fine. I got where you stand, and I got where I stand.
Yeah.
In future, I will watch all your offerings on streaming platforms only.
God, that is so disappointing to hear. I mean, if I was somebody in the BCCI, I would like really feel ashamed of myself. But this is, I mean, imagine having this effect on your most passionate and loyal fans. And did you lose all your money on the Dharamsala? No refund, nothing, right? Travel gone, tickets gone, everything gone.
Yeah. I know. I had to fight for 3 months. I got like 20% back.
20%. And God, that is sad. But you should go to Chennai. You should. I mean, not just the crowds, even the press. Well, I didn't cover a Chennai match this time, but they were saying all the provisions and all were first class in Chennai. I thought the tournament started very well in Chennai. I loved that match, Australia, Chennai. I think it was now looking back, obviously, a fitting first match for both those teams as well, since they met in the finals. Going back to like the 50s and 60s, I mean, we grew up sort of thinking that the reputation for the intelligent Chennai fan and knowledgeable crowd is something that perhaps of a little more recent, of the 90s, etc., as exemplified in 1999. But it's been around for like at least 70 years. So there must be some truth to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I remember reading that bit in Cashman also. And also when there was another, I think it was Suresh Menon, who had written about how Neil Harvey was once in Chennai just to sort of, inaugurate like a pavilion and all that, and how there were like 5,000, 6,000 fans just to get a glimpse of Harvey. And, this was back in the 50s. And I think
Harvey, who's not even a Tamil film star.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, on TV, it looks like such a lovely ground with the canopies and all. I went to the sort of old Chepauk, which is very concretey and not pretty in the way this one looks on TV. But of course, it has a sense. I mean, I think Chepauk should be hosting a World Cup final. Eden Gardens or Chepauk or Wankhede, it should be between these three. Ahmedabad should be not in the first 50 or first 100 choices for a World Cup final venue.
100 choice. You mean first 130,000 choices?
Yes, or 92,453 to be exact. That was the attendance at the final. Imagine a World Cup final like going 38,000 short of a full house.
So that's what gets to me. Like you're talking about all these people on the train who are, so desperate for tickets, willing to pay lakhs for tickets, but still 38,000 seats.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much of like black marketing and artificial shortages, all of that. I think from what we hear, like a lot of not just this is not limited to GC and all, just like a general point about the distributions that the association makes to all its clubs, etc. I mean, there's a lot of complimentary passes handed out, right? And from what we heard, a lot of those were put on sale. And then if you don't get buyers, you're holding out on your price. I mean, eventually, what do? You see if you're selling at a profit at like 10 times, as people were selling for the finals tickets for a few thousand rupees in the 30,000, 40,000 rupees upwards. You can afford to have a few unsold tickets because you're making up 10 times the price of one ticket. Yeah, so it's the margins that's more important. And anyway, in Ahmedabad, I never got the sense that this is like a very deeply cricket-loving city. I went there twice during this World Cup, India-Pakistan in the final. And India-Pakistan was strange. Everybody wanted India to beat Pakistan, of course, but nobody's really talking about the match. Nobody spoke about it even afterwards, like after that sort of phenomenal performance by India. And there was, of course, it turned out to be in the end quite a one-sided match, but still a spectacular performance. But nobody is really talking about Rohit or Bumrah or anybody on that evening of the match. They got a lot of their crowds from outside the city. And I think it's a shame that in a country where we have cities with such deep and committed cricket cultures, for them not to get a World Cup final and for Ahmedabad to get it, I mean, it felt like a shame.
So if they're not talking about the match, what are they talking about? The show?
I mean, I'm not really talking about it, is what I'm saying. They were not, I think a lot of the energy in Ahmedabad came from the visitors, the travelers. I could not really sense that sort of mania. And even the neutral matches in Ahmedabad were not well attended as opposed to the neutral matches in Wankhede and Chepauk, where you had a good crowd. Delhi, for that matter. I mean, Delhi had very good crowds and involved crowds. My family they watched the first the neutral match, South Africa, Sri Lanka. That was the first match in Kotla. And they watched it from the stands. Rabada's father was also in that stand. And I sat with them for a while. And there was a great atmosphere. And, people, KG's old man sort of really got into the swing of things. And the crowd was sort of happy to have them among him. And my younger daughter's 4, but I mean, basically they stayed on. They watched, I think they were at the ground for almost 7 hours before heading back. It was like a nice, lively, fun atmosphere. Ahmedabad was not that. It's not a venue that feels fun or lovely or warm in any way. It's just sort of large and unlovely and not well designed. It's not a good stadium.
If it has to lose out to the Kotla, then it is lost.
God, yeah, it's so easy to get lost in that place. It's literally got only scale. If scale is what you're going for, and it's something worth laying some sort of weightage on, then okay. Scale in terms of number, it doesn't have like I think how many steps are they up to the dressing room? Somebody was saying like Ravi Shastri apparently
150, 200 something.
Yeah, at least 90. And he made that trip where he said, I'm not going back down again. Like my knees can't take it. And it's very easy to get lost. It's a kind of very loopy stadium. It's the access into the stadium is not easy. It's not in a nice part of town at all. So it's not like visitors come and you can hang around and do things.
We should talk about the match though, India-Pakistan. And for me, watching from a distance, I'm living in America and I'm not even following full time. And, I can choose when to follow, when not to follow. But even then, the hype around that game and the general sort of discourse around that game it was nauseating for me. So how is it for you? Like how is it watching India, Pakistan or writing about it, talking about it, going to that game, the feel of that game? Should India and Pakistan be playing even in this World Cup? I don't know. Of course it's a World Cup and it's orchestrated that they will always play together because everyone wants the money. But how is it? How is the feel of that match?
What do you mean by that, Sidvi? Like, should they be playing in this World Cup at all?
No, I'm saying that at one level, there is this whole talk about how we should be boycotting Pakistan at all levels. But then, of course, when it comes to the World Cup, the BCCI ensures that they will play, or the ICC. Okay, let's be a little more technically correct here. The ICC ensures that they will play a game in the World Cup. So, I'm talking more from the Mike Marquessy sense that, is it so war minus the shooting? And should India, is it worth having an India-Pakistan game, given the cost that it can incur in the social and political sense?
In like how ugly and jingoistic things become because of an India-Pakistan match.
Yeah.
If you're using the Pakistan cricket team and that contest as a proxy of everything that you hate about your neighbor, enemy, whatever it is, then yes. But I feel there is a way to moderate this discourse. I genuinely think that cricket, as we found in 2004, there is a way for an India-Pakistan cricket encounter to be. A force for the good is overstating things, but it can be a lovely interaction. It can be an occasion of which fosters friendships, warmth, appreciation of the other, all of that. But of course, in how things are today and how anti-Pakistan nationalism and all that it has riding on it, it was always going to be a bit ugly, and it was. To have there was something about being at that match was on the match eve. There was something almost a little. There was something very joyless about it. First of all, we've already spoken about the large scale of that stadium, right? And then to have that massive security presence there, 8,000 odd, and no Pakistani journalists. And ironically, just like as we speak, I've seen a message right now has just popped up from Shahid Hashmi, the long-standing Pakistani cricket correspondent expert for AFP and others. And he was literally the only person who managed to get a visa and reach in time for the captain's press conference the day before the match. Everybody else was just left hanging. The fans were shut out entirely. So normally, I think in the eve of India-Pakistan cricket match, it's also an occasion for Indian and Pakistani journalists, etc., to meet each other, greet each other, spend a little bit of time, have a little fun. I think that kind of interaction also happens between fans. It can, of course, get a little out of control between fans as well. We've seen that across the world in India-Pakistan contests, but that's not all there is to it. I think there's some genuinely nice and memorable moments that all these interactions that fans take back with them. But the Pakistanis were blocked out altogether, and there was something something very untransparent about the way it was done. They do not say that we will not allow Pakistani journalists, we will not allow fans. They just didn't have any provisions for them. The High Commissions told fans that we've got no instructions, we don't know what to do with your applications. And they just kept them hanging, they kept them hanging. And, people were changing their flights and you think of what to do. One of our good friends and also one-time co-editor on the Cricket Monthly, Usman Samiuddin, he eventually came like weeks after he was meant to, because of all that went on with his visa. There were some other complications as well, but it started because of his visa struggles. So at that ground, I definitely sort of felt that absence for the India-Pakistan match. As for the greater jingoes in the media, I mean, that's, the thing is when it's all around you, you almost stop noticing it to an extent. You also sort of don't go looking for it. You know where to kind of switch off. I mean, noticing, you do notice it. I mean, maybe that's not the right word, but you just know where not to look. And, there's only so much of sort of this insane kind of jingles. It's on both sides. I mean, some of the things that we saw from on Pakistani Twitter and the Pakistani media, and the Rohit's tosses being fixed because look how far away from his body he tosses, and then the match referee goes and gets it and gives it to him. Those conspiracy theories and all were also sort of out of hand. Some of them are also funny. But I would have it would have just been nice for it to feel like a little bit more two-sided. Just how one-sided that whole occasion was felt very off to me. And perhaps it may have been got in a place like Ahmedabad, it might have gotten ugly. I don't know. I think places like Chennai and Kolkata would have probably been much more receptive to a large Pakistani contingent, and that would have been a nice occasion.
From a cricketing point of view as well, I think there is a gap between the quality at which Indians were playing this tournament and at the quality at which the Pakistanis were playing this tournament. Had that been, a very close match, or, had Pakistan taken India quite deeper, maybe the discourse would have been more about cricket, at least after the match has started. Because pre-match discourse, as far as I remember, it has always been, misplaced talks of war, minus the shooting or whatever you want to call it. It has never been about the cricket. But at least there was, in the 90s at least, there was some grudging admiration of the quality of players that Pakistan bring. But, this time I felt India were slightly overpowering the Pakistani players, and the match couldn't, it failed to live up to the billing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of India-Pakistan World Cup matches have. So in that sense, it's not quite the rivalry it was in the 90s. But you're right. I mean, they were playing on different planes.
No, I mean, it's right, because before the game, invariably, there's no talk about cricket. And after the game, if it's so one-sided, then again, there's no talk about cricket. So, yeah, it's a shame because, I mean, for what it's worth, it was still a very good game. And there were phases that were closely fought, and, there was a partnership between...
at 150 odd for two.
Yeah.
You thought it could be going somewhere, this game, but I mean, Bumrah came and just kind of, not him alone, but especially him, kind of just broke that game. I mean, he was brilliant in that match, especially. Rohit's innings was fantastic. I mean, just the way he took on Shaheen Shah and Haris. Though unfortunately a lot of people did the same to Haris. I felt bad for him, running in hard and bowling at 150, and just the number of times he got tonked over his head in the first over. It was. I felt like he deserved to break something going his way. I mean, it wasn't like it was bad luck. I just wanted him to succeed for all that he puts in.
He's like as our old the ex-Bangladeshi player who both of us used to really admire for what he put in, Taposh Boisia.
Taposh, yes.
No, talking about that match and Bumrah, you wrote this lovely piece after that game, and also wonderful that you wrote it. I'm assuming you wrote it on deadline, and you were. It was about Bumrah, and the first line it starts by saying Jasprit Bumrah is the best bowler I have ever seen, and then you go on to mention how that you don't mean that he's the greater than anybody else, but among all the bowlers that you have seen, how you feel that there has been no better sight. How is it just to watch Bumrah live and to see him bowl, and also in terms of the action, right? I mean, it's not like the rhythmic build-up that you have to the cliched great fast bowler, like they might have with, say, a Dennis Lilly or with, many of the other great bowlers, even Akram at his pomp. But how is it to watch Bumrah live, watch him there, break open that game, bowl those magic balls? Must be quite a spectacle.
The thing about Bumrah is that you still feel like he's like at some level he might just be pranking this action, like the way he's stuttering and hopping and skipping. Like, is he going to go through with this or not? And if you watch like at the warm-ups, Siraj's athleticism is like a sight to behold, even in the warm-ups. And you just watch him. I don't know whether it comes across on TV quite as much, but you're watching him live. He's got these beautiful long strides and all of that. And this Bumrah is just kind of jumping and hopping and stopping and stuttering, and you don't know what on earth he's up to. And the way he kind of gathers, there's about maybe couple of 2 or 3 or 4 strides in between where he might look like what one expects of a fast bowler. I mean, let me be clear that this is all to do with our conditioning. It's nothing to do. It's not a judgment on Bumrah's action and the way he does things. It's just that what we are used to seeing from fast bowlers are so different from what Bumrah ends up doing. But the extraordinary thing is that he does pretty much everything that a fast bowler can do. And I have not seen like someone who has that kind of completeness. Like very, very, very few bowlers, I feel, have reached that level of accomplishment. Like, what can't he do?
Yeah, and expanding on that, actually, you should also, like, since you saw games at the Wankhede as well, should also talk about the sort of the fast bowling quality that this Indian team has, because just watching Siraj and Shami and Bumrah, they're all so different, but when they come together, it's sort of the chemistry is electric. I mean, there's like an addictive quality to watching these three bowl, and not in a test match usually we've seen it, but in this World Cup, night after night they were doing it and just destroying teams.
Because they have this we said this in context of Bumrah, but generally as a group they had in this World Cup a combination of that control, that kind of discipline with the crazy ball, the magic delivery, which especially in that Sri Lanka match, they showed like time and time again. And it was perhaps a stronger batting team would have handled that differently, but I think everyone would have struggled to really get through that spell under lights by these three. They just seemed to know what to bowl when, and they just did it so perfectly. And first up, their first deliveries were so hard for Bumrah bowling that ball first up. Did Siraj also? Siraj is doing that perfect outswinger to take off stump, which he kind of pulled out of his back. I mean, those balls are not easy to. People sort of bowl that once or twice in their lives, and they feel, how could you better that delivery? Siraj has done it now twice in the course of a month or month and a half. He did it in the Asia Cup, and he did it again there.
Yeah, it was a sight to watch. And the thing is, they were really good. I mean, Bumrah was really good in the 2019 World Cup too, but in this World Cup, he seemed to have got that much better. And it was also, that was itself quite a thought, because when I remember in 2019 thinking that will he ever be able to better this, but he did.
I mean, to reverse swing that ball in Ahmedabad when you have two new balls, right, in that over, they barely get old, they barely get discolored, all of that, and then to reverse swing that past Shadab's outside edge, which many thought was a leg cutter, but not Bakar Yunus and not Bumrah himself at the end of the match. Very special.
Yeah. Yeah, apart from the India games, of course, one of the things that the World Cup gives you a chance to do is to watch the games that you might never see otherwise. Like, for instance, Australia against Afghanistan. But it's highly unlikely, apart from a World Cup, that you'll watch Australia play Afghanistan in Mumbai, and then to see what happened in that match, and to see Australia go to the verge of defeat, and then to watch Maxwell come up with what he came up with. Is there anything more freakier that you've seen on a cricket ground than that?
I mean, I don't think I've seen a freakier innings at the ground or on TV or on anything. It was very empty. I mean, not very empty, but relatively empty, the press box. The Aussie contingent was not very big. Of course, Afghanistan did not have a press contingent. And the Indians were also not out in great numbers. So it was a relatively sparsely populated press box. And I think a lot of people may have even left the ground when Australia won 7 and said, okay, let's beat the traffic, or I mean, they may have, or whatever it is. And just the incredible thing about that innings is that if you take out if you discount the fact that he was kind of almost crippled for a third of it, just to score 201 not out, chasing 290 odd, etc., from 91 for 7, as it eventually became. Of course, he came in sooner than that. Already makes it like an outlier innings it's something that you rarely ever see. But for him to do it like that, I mean, when he can barely move, when he's like spasming on the ground, and you feel like somebody asked him at the press conference afterwards, it's like, you look like you're going to bury him right there. The physios were there. He's lying still on the floor after fluttering about, and what's going to happen? And of course, at that point, he was told by the physio that, listen, if we get you up, I'm not sure whether we'll be able to get you back down. Which is different, for example, with what happened with Shubman Gill at the Wankhede. They took the calculated call that he might be able to come back, which he did. Maxwell, given the state he was in, which was described as full body cramp, pretty much, they said, we don't think you're going to be able to even come down the steps, once we get you up, let alone bat. So he just batted, and then to play. I mean, the thing is, you're watching it and you're wondering to yourself, like, what sport is he playing actually? Because this is certainly not anything like the cricket we know. We've not seen batters batting in this fashion. Like, what he's doing seems not batting, basically. When someone asked me, also ex-colleague Nishi, she asked me on chat, like, what did it feel like? And I give what felt like a very banal adjective in these circumstances, which is to say that but I meant it. It felt unreal. And then I thought I would actually maybe see that through in a piece, that I would write the piece as if that what we saw was unreal and everyone had just imagined it, because and kind of made this up, because it just had that really weird hallucinatory quality about it. It's like, what is it that we're seeing?
Yeah, there is a sort of a fantastical quality to that piece that you wrote. It's almost like it was straight out of fantasy, and nobody's able to explain what it is. And in terms of sport, I think basically Maxwell invented his own sport. Like, he sort of formed sort of the technique from whatever he could, because he couldn't move, obviously. So he's just standing there, and his hands have to do everything, and he has to invent things to do.
At this point, I want to talk about Cummins, the batting partner, and the sort of sense of detachment he brought to that. Because Maxwell it was like two guys in a pub, like, what are you doing? And this seems so weird. And we're just like laughing. And, we hit the ball into the deep and not run, because obviously Aussies would have normally like run hard and taken pinched three to some of those, but they're just like, they said, nah, I'm not doing it. And it seemed absurd to even them. There was this kind of really a detached sense of the absurd that they brought to proceedings. I mean, they themselves could feel it. And Cummins playing that, making that 61 ball, 12 or whatever it was, on that scorecard, it just seems so, it seems so wonderfully cricket. But Test cricket actually is the kind of thing you might associate with a partnership like that. So the other thing about it is that we don't actually have I was discussing this innings the next morning with Pradeep Magazine, the senior journalist, and also a friend, and we were just talking about actually we don't have a vocabulary to describe what Maxwell did. You can't rely on terms that you normally use to describe cricketing shots because they will A, be inaccurate, and B, do injustice to how incredible they were.
Yeah, I think the initial point that you mentioned, right, between description and analysis, and this sort of innings is a classic example of how it is best to only describe it, because how are you going to explain it? How are you going to analyze it? And forget the vocabulary. I don't think we even have the sort of the tools yet. I mean, the database tools to sort of put this sort of an innings and sort of describe it. Because here's a guy who can't move. And how do you sort of bring out that lack of complete absence of logical technique?
How do you build in an invalid filter into your...
Yeah, how do you?
How much do you mark it up by what factor?
No, and even things like in control and out of control. What is this? He was like his whole innings was out of control in a way. But he's hit 201 runs. What do you say?
The whole match was out of control.
The whole match was out of control. Yeah.
And it was also at the same time so sad. It was like this incredible sporting moment, and then the heartbreak for the Afghans. I mean, they were literally 1 wicket away from being serious challengers for a World Cup semi-final. I mean, what that would have meant to them. And it was because of how awesome Maxwell was, we almost kind of overlooked what a great moment that could have been for Afghanistan.
I must, talk about sort of watching India through the World Cup. I mean, there was a certain, you wrote this piece, of course, just before the final about the streak of victories and how teams go through this sort of the zone of blue. And just seeing this team, I mean, there was a certain ruthlessness about them through the World Cup. And, watching Rohit bat on top, watching Kohli, the sort of the predictability that came after that. It was like this wave that was just hitting the rocks. Shreyas Iyer coming in and just hammering everything out of sight in games. And then the bowling, which would invariably must have been something both inspiring as well as something new that you watched.
I don't know if anybody saw it coming, because of course, because of what they did in the Asia Cup especially, and how the injured players just slotted in so beautifully. Bumrah especially, and Rahul, I think, was a very important piece of that puzzle. There was always, earlier in the year, I think there was like a bit of uncertainty about how India would go. But because of the Asia Cup performance, people thought, okay, now they are among the favorites. But I don't think anybody expected them to be just quite as good. And there's this whole thing about going from city to city, a different opponent in every city, and then that had like a sort of carnivalesque feel almost to it, like a traveling carnival, just spreading joy and glitter and wowing different cities across the land, Chennai to Dharamshala to Kolkata to Mumbai, with their various skills. And there were various skills on offer. I mean, if you just think about the fact that we had like a left arm wrist spinner, which very few Indian teams have had in the past. The fact that we've had a bowler like Bumrah, who's pretty much a one-off. These are kind of talents that you don't see anywhere. I think the batting was at least a more sort of easily understood phenomenon, because they're not freaks. They come from a lineage of batting, which has been I don't know whether just as good or not as a unit, but in a recognizable mold. Rohit, I think Rohit batted to me like as well as Tendulkar has batted in the World Cups, and I mean, like I I think that is at a very very high level. Rohit in this tournament to me like batted at that level. He was like, people in the press always said, yeah, dada batsman, yeah, dada. You like that word, dada. You would use for like very few people, and you could use it for Rohit in a way you couldn't even for Kohli. Like Kohli looked almost pedestrian. I don't mean this as disrespect at all, because Kohli himself has talked about like the awe that of watching Rohit in full flow. And Rohit in full flow is not even the thing about Rohit in full flow is not like he's trying to be in full flow. Is just that he's just doing something that you feel he's so to use a word that haunted him in the past. He's so talented. Of course, we know that but those shots are so talented. Of course, there's a great deal of work that has gone into them, but they're just the ease with which he does them and the mastery with which he plays those shots. I feel like you have to be gifted at in a way that almost every other, no batsman, very few batters in world cricket are. I remember I saw Rohit like very young in 2007. He was at that camp which before the Indian team, the Indians left for England. And they were playing on that, that out ground of the Chinnaswamy. They have the ground 2 or whatever in Bangalore. Yeah. What's it called? Ground 2? It's anyway, it's that smaller ground adjacent to the thing in the same complex. And they were just having centre wicket practice. And Rohit, young Rohit, he kind of Kumble was bowling to him. And he just kind of leant into a cover drive. And it just kind of went into the stands. He, for all the world, he looked like he's just kind of placing it into the covers. Normal batsman would have got maybe a 1 or a 2 of that. It just flew over the thing, and Kumble like turned on his heel so fast and went back to his mark. And that was we had heard about Rohit the talent, but to see it there in that kind of practice arena was to like realize how. I mean, I'm sure people have these kind of moments with all gifted cricketers and people who watched Tendulkar early, and I think people who watched young Rohit also came off with that feeling that this guy is super special. And I think in this tournament, especially that innings against England in Lucknow, that was to me, I wasn't there, but that was to me my favorite Rohit innings of this tournament. The mastery on that surface, the way he kind of just lobbed over the infield sometimes, the way he also, and there was a case that he ought to have maybe done that in Ahmedabad again on a similarly sluggish surface in the final. The way he kind of just hung in there when for all the other matches, he was just making sure that he goes at a strike rate of 130, 140. For the England game, he kind of made that adjustment also, which was wonderful. To see him just rock back on and just deposit a pull shot into the stands, like time after time after time, easy as you like. He was batting at a very high level. Kohli was almost like the kind of pacemaker.
No, I wanted to ask specifically about Kohli because, that Kohli is the kind of player who you feel like, in form, out of form, all that doesn't matter to him. It's like almost like his accumulation is so much part of him. Like run making is so much part of him, as they used to say of, Bradman, that none of the other things really matter. He will end up making runs. There's some quality about that.
No, but what about his lean? I feel like that lean run that he had.
Oh yeah. Of course. No, I'm talking in this tournament. Yeah.
Yeah, in this tournament. But I feel like that lean run has added a lot of texture to Kohli and the way people follow him. Yeah. I think that failure has kind of made him like more accessible, more human, almost more lovable. That, along with this kind of giving these chases for the centuries, I think there is a kind of greater natural warmth between the crowd and Kohli as they see as there's this fragile guy who's fought hard times, who's also now chilled out a little bit, like the way he was dancing, working the crowds, but having put that behind him. Yeah, you're right. There was this kind of, there seemed to be that old Kohli determination of like making it count, not giving it away, and just being able to. He knows this format so well. Like, and I don't know whether his game was always made for this format or he's kind of made the adjustments that he needs to be able to play it at a level where he can keep scoring without taking risks. He can score at 90 without having to do anything stupid. It helps him that he has players in his team who, like Rohit, could score 140, strike rate of 140 at top. Shreyas in the middle order who can hit those sixes while Kohli keeps going, taking the game deep. Rahul can turn it on, and so can Jadeja, Surya Kumar, whoever it is. He has cushion above him and below him. It was nice to see that moment in Wankhede when he got his 50th 100 in those circumstances, in a big World Cup semi-final in what is now his home city, which, as he put it, my idol was there. And the person I love him the most, that's Anushka, his wife, was there. So is my idol, Sachin. To do it in that full house was also a sort of a lovely moment.
Yeah. I think Ashoka had made this point in our final review. He had said how, irrespective of the conditions and the pitch, Kohli can score at 90 or 100 strike rate. It's like he has developed that kind of that he has that skill to take the conditions out of the equation and still score at a 100 strike rate, which is remarkable for any batter, but more so in a one-day, more so like with the kind of variety of conditions that we saw in this World Cup.
Yeah. And I think two things kind of contribute to that a great deal. Is I think his placement and his fitness, and he's a master of placing, not necessarily to get the boundary, but just to place it short enough of a fielder or wide enough of a fielder to be able to pinch the one or the two, and he can just keep doing that, and then to keep running those hard twos deep into his innings, and some really, really hard twos. He can, like, where others would not attempt it or they would get out. But he has those shots, you bowl him something slightly straight, and he'll work it away behind square, in front of square, whatever it is. But just far enough from the fielder to be able to come back for a second. These are not risks for him. Just think about the number of people who got batters who cramped at the Wankhede itself. Like, let alone across the tournament, especially in Wankhede. It was humid in Bombay. It was even in November, but October is humid in Bombay. Klaasen, Gill, Maxwell. There was perhaps another, Mitchell towards the end of his innings in the semi-final. We're not even talking about bowlers, but Kohli got his 100. He got some treatment at the end. I don't know what that was for. I saw some strapping on his quadricep. But I don't think he was cramping, which is because he probably puts himself through so much in training, and his diet and his fitness and his routines are like so well calibrated and so precisely done. He measures himself in terms of fitness, and all he aims for Djokovic, Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, those are the guys he's aiming for. He's not like trying to be fitter than the fittest cricketer in the world. He's aiming for another league of athlete. And for a cricketer to get there, which is not as dynamic as a sport as these other sports are, I think that helps him a great deal.
Yeah, talk about the final though. I mean, you went for it and you were talking about the tickets and everything, but the general expectation and how, I'm guessing 9 out of 10 people that you met would have been expecting an India victory, and then to have this grand celebration at the end, and people coming from different parts of India. I mean, I think people came from far and wide to watch this match, and in fact, some people were saying there were more people from outside Ahmedabad than within Ahmedabad in that final. And then the expectation, and then the sort of the reaction as the game went on, and the shock and disappointment and everything. And it's like, It's almost like the whole air was being sucked out of the stadium gradually as Travis Head was batting.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. That's exactly what it felt like. Literally nobody I spoke to, no fan, felt that India would lose that match, because that's the kind of standard at which India was playing all through this tournament. The only person who called it the other way was Sanjeev Somyal of Hindustan Times, who had traveled. Okay, so in Ahmedabad, the great thing was that we were actually staying in a farmer's hostel, because accommodation was so hard to get. And so, I mean, the prices were something. Hotels which were normally go at like 4,500 rupees or whatever, going like 70,000, 75,000.
Did you say farmer's hostel?
That's exactly what I said. So it was, we were staying in the heart of town. I mean, these are Gujarati farmers, okay, like rich patidar farmers, not making ends meet type of farmers, because there's this, I mean, I'm assuming this because of the kind of the facilities that there were for them at this cooperative bank, which has basically gives out loan to farmers, and they have these kind of rooms in what they call the farmers hostel, which were now made available through contacts, etc.
So that's where farmers come to stay for selling their wares, or what do they come there for?
If farmers come there to kind of make loan applications or settle their loans or whatever, do that paperwork. It was a cooperative bank servicing farmers. So in this farmers hostel, right in the middle of town, there were like us journalists staying in a dorm-like setting. And it was great fun. Like both matches, I think there were like 6-person dorms, and the other one we had like 2 rooms. And so in the second one, we had, since there were 2 dorms, there was, I think, 3 of us in one room. And then Sanjeev Somyal, just like it was late at night, everyone has filed their pieces, lights out, and it's like gone dark. And Sanjeev suddenly speaks from his bed. So, final word. And basically call the match is what he was saying, 1:00 at night. And I kind of hedged. I'm not good at predictions. And then finally I said, he who wins the toss will win the match, which turned out to be right.
Which was right.
Yeah. Except I thought the team would bat and kind of win. Anyhow, but Sanjeev just said, I said, what about, Tere ko kya lagta hai? Sanjeev said, I have my doubts. And that's all. Those are his final words. I have my doubts. And then halfway through the match, he was sitting sort of outside. I asked him, because he's a very good cricketer himself. During the chase, not when it looked like obvious that Australia would win it. And I asked him, like, what's it looking like? And he said Australia again. But he was one of perhaps the only person who called it for Australia. Everybody else, especially the fans, maybe a few journalists still might have thought, of course, yeah, this could go either way. And big match, Australia. I mean, let's not forget, Australia were on an 8-match streak themselves coming into the match. Like India's 10-match streak is one thing, but Australia's streak was perhaps more useful in the sense it tested them in every way. It they had that huge scare after a massive total in Dharamsala against New Zealand. Then they had this unreal comeback against Afghanistan at the Wankhede. They not squeaked past, but they kind of edged past South Africa in a very tight semi-final, low scoring relatively, 213, that jinx figure against South Africa. So their streak really stretched them and perhaps kind of hardened them in a way, that in the way adversities are meant to. What doesn't kill you, etc. India was not tested in this tournament. I mean, the closest they came to it briefly was 2 for 3 right at the very start against Australia. Then there was Mitchell and Williamson were sort of going at it, and they were kind of slightly falling apart with their bowling and fielding, the control. But even then, you knew that they're not New Zealand's.
Even then, they had like 390 on the board, and
yeah. But so India was not tested in Australia, and with this 8-match streak, was for them to have come through all those challenges was probably very useful for them, and maybe better preparation for a final than India's dream run was. Even so, like among the fans, everyone, India's winning, India jeetna, and the tickets. A lot of people came there just to be able to watch India win, and that's why they kind of left the ground before it was even over. And that was really kind of sad and shameful to see this World Cup final ground stadium emptying out, even as there are like 30, 40 runs left, and then because of no fault of traveling fans, such a small number present anyway from Australia. And the booing for the umpires at the presentation ceremony, it was all kind of unsavory and not the performance that the Australians put on that final deserved deserved something much more. It deserved like a long and heartfelt ovation. They played an outstanding match. Like they called it. They read the conditions dead right. They bowled superbly. Like even after going at 8 and over, whatever in that first power play, Rohit's assault, Kohli's consistency, they overcame all of that. Change ups. Pat Cummins. I mean, there was a period 10 over phase in the middle of the innings where he just changed the bowler almost every over. It's very unusual to see that in 50 over cricket, right? You might see sometimes in T20 cricket, over after over. Like I think Hazelwood bowled 2 overs on the trot, and everybody else was change around. Obviously, I mean, he just thought that let's just not let them settle. Let's just kind of just make it hard for them. They fielded amazingly well. Heads catch, of course, being the lead example. Warner prowling that infield and outfield. For them, then Travis Head's innings finally in that partnership with Labuschagne and Travis Head. They played a sensational match. They like outplayed India in every department. Head's innings, I remember I was at the ground for Ponting's and Gilchrist's innings. And I remember feeling that sense of awe at just like how much better these guys were than everyone else. To watch those, like, both in the 140s, those innings were. And then back then, they've also scored at extraordinary strike rates. And you just felt like these guys are like leagues above anybody else. With Head towards the end of this innings, you felt like he's playing at that level in this tournament, in the few matches that he had to play that innings in a World Cup final against a bowling lineup which is bowled so well. It was a phenomenal innings. A couple of tough overs up front. Bumrah especially had him like in all kinds of trouble in 1 over, but he just recovered so well. And then the dew came, and he just he paced himself also. He paced himself, I think, very well for knowing that batting is going to get easier and easier. It was a sensational innings.
Yeah, I think there was this one. Mohammad Shami came back for his second spell, and then Travis Head hits the first ball over his head, straight back over. Yeah. And that was when I thought of Gilchrist. I'm like, Gilchrist, this was a Gilchrist shot. So you would have done that. Yeah. And
you could hear, this because the crowd is so. I feel like the crowd is so intent on not applauding the opposition. Perhaps they don't realize they sometimes do make it worse for their team. That kind of silence which Cummins talked about.
Mm.
I mean, one would think like for cricket lovers, just to watch something like that, instinctively you would applaud. Even if you're determined not to, it just comes, right? Like to see a great ball or a great shot. But they were so committed to this kind of silence at anything that the opposition does well. And I think then it's very, you can kind of feel it. Then you can start feeling the mood of the match change in a very dramatic way.
Did the DJ leave early before the crowd, or what happened?
I don't know, because again, it's this press box thing. So you have to keep popping out to to get a
Check
sense
on
of
the
what's
DJ.
going on. Yeah, to even like get the DJ's full effect. But I think they played like Back in Black back to back some 20 times at the end. ACDC, because all the playlists through the match were entirely Indian. I know Mickey Arthur made this point during the Pakistan match and copped a lot of flack, because obviously that's not the reason Pakistan lost. I didn't hear any Digital Pakistan today, but basically the larger point was that it felt very much like the host country is running everything to just the way they want it. So, and suddenly, but basically you would hear strains of music coming through your hermetically sealed press box. And I couldn't hear any, you would hear Indian songs all through. And then suddenly towards the end, when Australia had won, it was like AC/DC and that Screech Back in Black loop on loop. And I think that maybe they played Thunderstruck at the presentation ceremony itself.
I find this silence thing a little interesting because, I mean, first of all, you're there in large numbers to support your home team. So irrespective of, how the game is going, I would think there's also a sort of a impetus to cheer them on and to egg them on and to say, okay, I mean, the game's not going your way, but come on, let's make some noise and get behind them.
Buck up, lads, or whatever.
Buck up, whatever.
Yeah.
In fact, there was Kohli. Kohli was actually signaling to the crowd.
Yes. Kohli, I think, really believes in, I think, the impact of the atmosphere and what the crowd can do. All through the tournament, he was like constant. And he's done this in the past also, in test matches and stuff also. He kind of gets them going with their arms and, he really senses like what that mood can do. And for like the crowd, I mean, the players are there, they're struggling, and then it is counterproductive, like you said. It is odd. Also, it's also a bit comic. Like I remember this for the semi-final, I was sitting next to Matt Roller of ESPN Cricket Info, as the UK correspondent.
Yeah.
And he was like, he just would laugh each time. He would put his finger to his lips and say, shh. Like just to see like how everyone suddenly goes quiet. It's like somebody's like shushed them. And I said that, so I started saying, it's really sad. I remember a point again, I gave like him some old talk. Like, I remember when I was young, I think people would clap on the opposition. At least in my lifetime, I remember that it was not sort of this complete blanket silence like this. But he said, I just find it funny. The way it's just like someone just turning on and off a switch. It's weird. It's Pavlovian.
Yeah, it is. Also, I wanted to bring in one point about this whole, the conflation of the Indian team also with the ecosystem around the team, the BCCI and everything. And I'm noticing both on social media and also occasionally when I talk to people also that there is this sense that, this Indian team losing gives a sense of, I wouldn't say joy, but also people are also happy about the team losing and not because they're like, look at the arrogance and look at the arrogance of the BCCI and what they're doing. And, the team losing is actually good. And there have been a few columns also, I think, written after the World Cup final saying how people are happy that the Indian team didn't win. Did you get the sense of that as well going around, not just in the press, but also generally that there is so much of power and arrogance and it's like, not winning is also fine.
It's like anyone but India is...
Anyone but India. Correct.
Yeah. I think I've sensed that for a while. And I can kind of totally identify with that feeling as well. I mean, with people feeling that this is a bully. I mean, I'm not talking about the cricketers. I'm talking about just, as you said, the ecosystem in which this one player has this like obscene and totally disproportional sense of say on everything. I mean, it's to do with the fact of, and the irony is to do with the fact of a large fan base for which the board actually doesn't give a toss about. So it's So I feel this has been the case for maybe a decade. That India's outsize say in the way world cricket is run, it does rankle with people across the world from various other territories. It is, I mean, it's not quite anyone but England. India is not sort of colonized in the past all the countries it plays against. But there is a kind of, they are seen as bullies, and in many ways, they are bullies. The BCCI does run world cricket in a way that is kind of legitimately upsetting to people not benefiting from it.
The tragedy about all this is that in the last 10 years, India have produced like superlative bunch of cricketers. I mean, as a superlative bunch of bowlers at least. Right? And batsmen India have always produced, but this is a fast bowling unit, so when I hear sentiments like anybody but India, and it's a prevalent sentiment among, a lot of people based on, their ideological bent and such. But I feel a little bit sad because I kind of take the position that you can hate the BCCI for all the bullying that they do and still love the players because they are this immensely talented bunch of cricketers that we have, and they are going away and they don't have trophies. So that, I feel like I'm in a slight minority that is torn because I really don't want BCCI to continue on this, all-consuming path of hogging all the resources and being unjust to both the practitioners of the game and also to the audience. I do not want that, but at the same time, it's a very difficult position to take. I do want these bunch of players to win something at least, right? Because this is like once in a generation talent that we are seeing in Bumrah, in Shami, even Siraj, in Kohli, Rohit.
And Ashwin and Jadeja too. Don't forget that.
Ashwin, Jadeja, yeah.
Poor Ashwin, who couldn't barely get a game.
Yeah.
To be fair, they've won a lot as well. It's they've got a lot of, but yeah, they don't have the silverware, and I think even they know, like, so much of legacy is about this, about having a World Cup to your name and things. But I think they'll also know they've performed really well over the last decade.
Yeah, and I'm saying these things don't come along as often as you would like. Like here, and for instance, if it's like a annual event, like for instance, a Wimbledon, or you have the Super Bowl here and things. If you have a heartbreak of this scale, you can come back the next year, because the next year the sort of season starts in 6 months' time. Or in tennis, you compete the very next year. But here, you have to, for a 50-over World Cup, you wait 4 years, and by then who knows how many players in this team will still be playing. And it's an opportunity that doesn't come along that often. So
that's right. And the next one is going to be in South Africa.
Yeah,
and you're going to have to make sure that you have a set of players who can travel well, play well in South Africa. And that might be the case. There's great depth in Indian cricket now, but it's not always easy to put together a team that does well there.
I wanted to, end by talking about this whole thing. When you mentioned that the fans were starting to leave when they realized that the game was slipping away and all that. So one of the pieces that you wrote during this World Cup was about the fans and the reactions. And there was this really touching segment that you had about meeting the Bangladesh super fan, and how, when India beat Bangladesh, many of the Indian fans, taunted him and sort of, shredded that tiger that he was carrying, the stuffed tiger. And you also spoke about the general sort of triumphalism as well as the jingoism during the games and things. Do you think that the feeling that you got during this World Cup, do you think that a lot of people are, so invested in the victories and the winning of this team, both to project their own sort of superiority as well as to sort of feel vindicated about being winners themselves? Do you get the feeling that it's become like overwhelming, that sense of, the thirst for victory?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely that sense of projection. That's always there in sport. I mean, on the back of what the team that represents you, what they do on the field, you walk taller, you feel prouder, you feel better about your life and your day and your world around you and all that you're capable of. Uh, that is a part of sport, but this kind of sort of that this ugly um, urge to kind of show another their place to kind of not even accept that that they might have similar feelings associated with their teams and in their minds. I mean, it's just so kind of it's so narrow in its outlook, and it's so ugly in how it plays out. In the case of the Bangladeshi fan Shoaib, here's a young cricket mat fan. I mean, now you see a few more like Shoaib with stripes on his face, etc. And they wear the tiger maybe on the head or whatever, wave the flag, travel with the Bangladesh team. He was the pioneer. He was a mechanic. He would travel without money across not just Bangladesh, but to overseas countries. And he would he would have no money to get back. Sometimes he would have to work his way till he was able to get back. He would find places to stay at garages close to the stadium. He would scout around for garages because being a mechanic, a garage would house him. And he could also earn a little bit while working there, things like that. And he kind of became slowly this face of Bangladeshi fandom. And some of these details, by the way, I got also because I sat with him for the Wankhede match while they were playing South Africa, Bangladesh, and with Mohammad Isam, the Bangladesh cricket correspondent, and
the legend of Bangladesh.
So, yes, very much the written word of Bangladeshi cricket in English, and. So Isam was also giving me some of the backstories, and Shoaib and I were chatting, and he was telling me about his experience, especially in Pune. And ironically, like just the day before the match, this was the India-Bangladesh match in Pune, there was, he saw a car at the gate, and there's a hand stuck out of it. And I wonder whether this is the famous Lamborghini, which did like 200 and broke the 200 barrier 3 times, just like it has done in one-day cricket, belonging to Rohit Sharma. And his hand was stuck out, and he just like heard somebody say Ali Bhai behind him, and he looked at Ali Bhai, and this was like Rohit. And this Shoaib is a die-hard Rohit fan, and he was overwhelmed to see this Rohit. Like Rohit is calling him on his car, and he's calling him Ali Bhai and like shaking hands with him. It was like one of the great moments of his life. That's what he told me. And then the next day, Bangladesh was doing well, and he was obviously waving the flag and doing the chants. And then the Indian supporters started doing the Nagin dance in his face, and they started shouting Jai Shri Ram into his ears. And this is something, this conversion of Jai Shri Ram into this heckle, and in this kind of really ugly sledge is something I can't even understand from the point of view of believers. Like, why would you use this? Why would you use your God as a way of kind of reduce it to this kind of petty sledge? But so I find that even odd from the point of view of from
piety. Yeah.
From
a pious person using that as a sledge. Yeah.
Yeah. And to do this in like, and especially as it has been done repeatedly against to Muslims in the Bangladesh match, to the very few Pakistani fans who made it to Ahmedabad, including that Chacha
Pakistan,
Chicago Chacha Muhammad Bashir. And to have like these conch is blown into his ears and Jai Shri Ram and I sort of urging him to repeat or taunting him to repeat Jai Shri Ram. This kind of hounding of the Muslim just for being Muslim and for just being Muslim and coming to watch in this case a cricket match, but it could be in any other context in contemporary India. It's a really sort of it's. I mean, I can't even find the word for it because we've seen so much of it now in the past few years. But it's like deeply distressing, and for people to have to endure that is really, really sad. That said, I mean, this is not to say that things are all good in the end or whatever, but he said like a lot of people then comforted him and consoled him and, apologized, etc. But he said he couldn't sleep at night at all because what these fans did, to complete that story, is after they kind of started heckling him and all of that, Jai Shri Ram, Nagin dance, started hustling him, pushing him, shoving him. At the end of the match, handsome victory to India. Kohli's got this century that he kind of, they played around for, and everyone's delighted. A group of fans asked him for that tiger, that soft toy that he carries around. So he hands it to them, and then they start just tossing it among themselves and they're beating it about. They're just playing with it, and they literally knocked the stuffing out of it. So, and then it was kind of totally mutilated and torn or whatever. They just kind of just chucked it at him, and then they left. And he was like really unnerved by this whole experience. And then the next match, which was at the Wankhede where I met him, he was like, I wanted to still, get this thing fixed up, the tiger, and bring it with me. But when I took it out of my bag, I realized like one leg had come off altogether. That's how they had kind of manhandled this. In a way, this is also, it's almost this, in his relationship with cricket, which is, I think, true for many people, there is almost like this childlike fervor. And in this case, it was snatching a toy from a child. Without meaning to be patronizing towards him, he's probably a man in his 20s. But that toy is the symbol of what he holds most dear in his life, which is the Bangladesh cricket team. And I think sports needs these characters to almost inhabit in their person, in a concentrated form, what it means to so many people. The super fan is, sometimes the super fan becomes a bit of a shtick. It's just the guy who paints his face, or people who, dress a certain way and come, whatever. But still they embody something which speaks to what sport means to people. And the feelings and the passion it rouses among them, the sense of loyalty it might draw out of some people. But that kind of connect between sports people and fans, these are the guys in whom you can see all come together. So to try and break this guy's spirit and to break his toy in that way, it was just seemed so kind of ugly and chauvinistic, yet not surprising.
The thing is, it happens with victory and defeat. So after the World Cup final defeat, Australian cricketers are complaining about, they lodged a complaint about the harassment that they, as well as their partners, are getting on social media and being the abuse they're getting. So it doesn't matter. I think both victory and defeat are sort of vehicles to.
Yes, we saw the 1996 final. I was at that that match. Unfortunately, I was young, and then I was kind of shepherded away from the side before the riot actually happened, and I got back and I saw those scenes. Yeah, and so you're right. There could be rage. There could be anger at your own team. Sometimes there could be anger at the opposition. And now, as India has risen in the cricket world, it is this kind of ugly triumphalism. And in the cases of when your opponents are Bangladeshi or Pakistani, this kind of religious chauvinism which has come into it, which is completely unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of the feeble defense, of course, that you will hear very often on social media is, have you seen how European football fans behave? Or have you seen how, the whataboutery, the classic, like, this is nothing compared to what other sports go through. But
I mean, that is true. It is, but it's a different point, as you say.
I mean, it's
but the violence of drunken hooliganism and whatever, that operates at a whole different level. And I mean, you see like racist chants in football and all of that. I mean, but how is that justifying?
Exactly.
It doesn't ennoble what you're doing in any way.
And just because one is saying that this is graceless and this is unnecessary and this is not on, it doesn't mean we are saying that what the European fans doing are right. That is also wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you should be chucking or a chicken bone at Siraj or whatever happened to him
in Australia.
Yeah. So definitely not.
Yeah. So that of course,
you also like sort of run. I mean, there is also when you sit among the crowds and you travel among them, you find like there's so many of them who are incredibly like well tuned into the game, and sometimes when you're following from the stands, you actually have a more intuitive sense of how the match is playing. You can actually watch it in a way that you're following the ebb and flow in a quite an organic way. And you'll find fans who have fantastic memories, who have like know all kinds of things, all kinds of stats, and how many sixes Rohit needs to pass Chris Gale, etc. But it's kind of, but there is, despite that, this overriding. There's this definite edge of jingoism which is present in Indian cricket right now. Or maybe has been for a while, but you can certainly sense it now. I mean, me having come on to like cover cricket after a while, I can certainly feel that.
Yeah, I think again, one of our mutual friends, Sharda Ugra, says that the 1996 World Cup was that moment when she clearly felt that Indian fans stopped applauding the opposition, and that was this sort of the starting point, one could say, of where we are now. But I mean, just to wrap up, is this something that you think you will be tempted to do again? Like take a tournament or a series and cover it, or write regular columns about it. Has this hooked you, or has this been something that you look at as a one-off? Because I know for a fact that you have like legions of admirers everywhere, and who always ask about where you're writing, and many people wonder where you disappeared and why you disappeared away from cricket. So,
I don't know. I mean, broadly speaking, it will be sort of one-offish in the sense, now that I've done like over the past, 6 weeks, I maybe have had a piece across different, mainly for the HT, but in a few other places as well. I may have done like a piece every third day or so, roughly. And that's like much more cricket writing than I've done possibly in the last maybe decade. I don't know. It was, I think it will probably just be an assignment. I don't know, I'm feeling too self-important to even think about it in this way. So I don't know. I don't think I'm going to become a cricket writer again, if that's the question. But it was like a lot of fun.
That 2014 Chandrapal piece that you did for Cricket Monthly. Yeah, I finally finished it this year, man. It took me 8
Question
years.
is,
but
when did you start it?
In 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not
See,
bad. 9 years.
you did the right thing. I wrote it like to mirror a Chandapal innings, and you read it in that same way as well. It should take an eternity, and you should perhaps never get to the end of it.
For those listening, and if you haven't read the piece, I will link it. It is gold standard in profile writing. Definitely one of the favorite pieces that we published in the Cricket Monthly when I was still editing for them. And I had the joy, of course, of reading the first draft and suggesting a few changes, though that there weren't that many. But yeah, that was a marvelous piece. Also, please check out Rahul's books, his cricket book, Pandits from Pakistan, and his novel, Sly Company of People Who Care. We are hoping for more books, hopefully soon. And we would love to. It's also great to have just talk about this World Cup from someone who was at the games and who covered it closely, who wrote about it. And thanks, Rahul. It is fabulous to have you on.
Thanks a lot, Sidvi. Wish you were here, and we could have done some of this travel together. We've had the odd nice cricketing tour together. Well, not long ones, but short ones.
If at all, there was one match that I would have loved to be at the press box, and especially in your company, would have been the Australia-Afghanistan match. I think the Maxwell innings, we would have had a ball of a time just watching it and laughing about it and writing about it, and sort of it would have been a never to be forgotten experience for me, and as it was already for you. So yeah,
let's do it 2027 in Africa. Next time in Africa.
Next time for Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, thank you everyone for listening. The 81allout.com is our website. We are at 81allout on X, as it's now called. Please rate and review the podcast. Your reviews really help in getting more people to find us and follow us, because we do have 81 All Out, a cricket podcast. We do have the word cricket there, but generally when people see 81 All Out, they don't know what the hell we're talking about. Also, thank you for supporting us in our republication ventures. We spoke about War Minus the Shooting by Mike Marquesi, the book that we were honored to republish. So please pick it up if you haven't already. We have a lot of people who have been reading that book during this World Cup and finding echoes of 1996 and all that we're seeing now, especially when it comes to the jingoism and the fans and the sort of the rise of Indian cricket.
The marriage of corporatization and nationalism.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which has now gone out of whack since it began. Since Marquesi observed it, of course, very astutely in '96. And yeah, we'll hopefully join you in about a week or 10 days' time for our next episode. Thanks, Ashoka. Thanks, Rahul. And good night.
India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India home. Lords goes wild.